Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle, March 6th. Welcome, Jen. Thanks for being with me today. We thought we would talk about International Women's Day is Wednesday. And so, women-owned business that we have here, and we happen to employ all women at this point in time in our company. It is very important to us. It is also a very important topic for us because many of us have daughters. And also, a lot of the firms that we're coaching are, if not all of the firms that we're coaching, are trying to figure out how do we continue to elevate women. And, why do we still have the issue with over 50% of women in public accounting? That's the number. And then we get up to, partnership or ownership, and it's still, hovering in the 20%ish, 25%ish, number. So it's been creeping up like 1% a year or something, if you look at the trends. And so we have to say, what do we need to do to figure out how to elevate and empower and engage, more women leaders. And so we have been doing some reading about it. We have a few statistics we'd like to share. And then we thought we'd talk about some strategies that, we think can be employed or maybe reignited. You might be doing some of these or have done some of them in the past, and maybe it's just needs some more attention now. So, I'm going to start with that with some setup. What else would you like to say, Jen, for a setup?
Well, just that, we have a gender gap. We have a gender gap in leadership, and we have a gender gap in compensation. And it doesn't feel like it's easing, not at the levels that it should. And especially as women begin to eclipse men in the number of college graduates and the number of accounting graduates. We shouldn't have all women and men kind of start off at the same spot, but women just can't ascend at the same level. leanin.org calls it the broken rung. Like there's a rung on the ladder that women just, their foot falls through, and we just can't climb at the same speed and with the same velocity and trajectory as men. And so there's just got to be something done about that. We've got to continue to talk about it and work on it and figure out what it is that really causes that.
Yeah, I think that's good. And leanin.org, since you're quoting that site, I was reading an article last week about Gen X women leaving the workforce. And we saw a big leave of women during the pandemic as they had to move and focus on, home commitments, raising kids or parents, elderly parents, or, just whatever it was. There's all kinds of statistics that just show that women, the burden, if you will, or the responsibility of child rearing, home care, all of those things falls on the women. And when we looked at promoting women, that whole, how do we have people progress? leanin.org cited that for every one woman that gets promoted to a senior leadership position, 2 leave. And so we're just got to figure out that it's different for women. And I know we've had, a lot of, change in the generations and more hands-on with the millennial dads, if you will. And you just lots, paternity and all of those things. And, more is expected or, different expected. But we also don't have the same responsibilities, or it's just not shifted enough. And we say that if women are not winning at home and they have forced to choose, they are going to choose home over work, where men typically do not. Men will figure out something else to handle home, and they will focus on work. It's just not right or wrong. It's just, the way it is. So what can we do to have people feel like they're winning both at home and at work? And how can we structure jobs? How can we, how are we talking about expectations? We can't compare. That's one of the things I would say we should stop doing, is comparing, that it's not the same for women and men, and stop pretending that it is. Because even with all our advances and all of the things that have, evolved, we still see that, they're forced to choose, and they're going to choose family or home or work, or the home before work. So anyway, those are some of the things that I think we have to, really probe into in this discussion.
So this idea that women are quitting in greater numbers, Tamera, some are referring that to that as the great breakup, where women are like, this, it's not you, it's me. I'm done. I can't get where I need to get, or I can't have the life I need to have, whatever that looks like.
Right.
So I'm just going to leave, and I'm either going to go somewhere else or I'm going to start my own. Or do gig-based work or something else because it's just not working. And so, the statistic that you shared, one director for every one woman director promoted, 2 directors quit, 2 women directors quit.
Right.
That's a terrible statistic, and that's 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Right.
That doesn't work. And so, I do think one thought I had while you were saying all that about the great breakup is I don't think enough firms are tracking really good retention statistics or turnover statistics.
Mm.
And I think, just since we're talking to HR professionals,
Yes.
talent focused people, like keeping track of quit rates, and in particular, what they call voluntary and involuntary turnover, and tracking it. So voluntary is I quit and involuntary is please leave. And then for the voluntary turnover, the I quits, which is what we have to be very concerned about, is there's 2 kinds of voluntary turnover. And that's what they call desirable voluntary turnover, which is they say I quit and you say, oh, phew, we won't have to perform out. And the other kind is they say I quit and you want to lay your head down on the desk and cry because they're undesirable turnover. We would have loved to have kept them forever. They're so great. And I think that in HR we need to keep better statistics of those. But I want to add the male female dimension, and that is in particular this undesirable turnover, the I quits that we just can't bear. What's your gender breakdown? And I think, keeping DE&I stats, gender, race or ethnicity or cultural background, keeping statistics, knowing what your quit rates are and what your win rates are and what your promotion rates are, not just by, level,
right,
but by other classifications. So we can figure out what do we really have going on here in our firm? And is the turnover heavily weighted in any one area? So that's something I don't think we do a good job of tracking that or reporting on it or discussing it or analyzing it. And I think if we did, we might learn some things. I'm not sure, but I sure know I'd like to know what the stats are.
Right. No, I think that's really great. And I think it is also by level, and then by some of those demographics, because I think we all feel like we're losing people, senior supervisor to manager. Like that's a decision criteria. Am I going to stay in this profession? But then I think we see another one, manager to principal or partner. And, maybe it's manager, senior manager, somewhere in there. But to see those trends, I think would be really insightful and say, how come? And what do we need to do to accommodate that? And so you made me think we also probably need to do a better job of defining what do those senior leader roles look like and having more flexibility in them, like a part-time partner, flexibility in, when they work, flexibility in the kinds of, jobs or projects or clients they manage, that could look different for people. We can be pretty rigid of this is what's expected of a partner instead of saying, what do we need for partners? And this goes for any role, men or women, by the way, but we do hurt ourselves when we don't stop and define it, particularly with the women, because they look at it and go, I can't be that. I can't do that, or I can't do that right now. And how do we, facilitate that? And so I think that flexibility in defining those roles would help also. And if we don't know, it's hard to define, what that might be.
100%. Yeah. The other piece of it is, I was just sitting here thinking about like cause effect or whatever.
Yeah.
And, I think women are being promoted. My optical view of it is it feels like they're getting promoted at decent rates inside our profession. But when you read statistics, they're saying that for every male promoted, 87%, for every 100 men, it's 87 women, are being promoted. And that it's even lower if you're a female of color.
Color.
It's even a lower statistic. The same with pay. So I think we have to pay attention to promotion and what's expected role wise. We have to pay attention to pay.
Yes.
And we would never ask you to pay people that have two different roles the same amount if the roles are not of similar market value or similar levels of responsibility. But when they are, I'm having a heck of a time understanding how, according to a GAO report in 2021, that for the same role, men are getting paid essentially, women are getting paid 82 cents on the dollar of what men are getting paid for the same role. I don't get it. I really
in
don't.
2021, and that's it. That's recent. Like that's in
So
2021.
that's a GAO report from 2021. Yeah. So it's a year old. I mean, it's
but still.
2022 was last year. We're in 23, but I promise you, it didn't soar up to 97 cents on the dollar or something.
Exactly.
And it's been at this kind of a gap, folks. I mean, I've been studying it a while. It isn't like that's man, we've made leaps forward. We can't get to equity. And I have a hard time understanding it because there has to be bias in the decision making and discrimination, because like we're in the room, we have our own business here. We try to be fair about like, hey, wait a minute, these roles are equal basically. Or these people's performance is similar. Why would we pay this one less than that one? When somebody comes from the outside and they're going to be asking more because the market has accelerated, we stop and say, wait, we all have to make market adjustments for people. I mean, if we're really committed to fairness and pay equity, this gender piece has to be looked at. And Tamera, you said something a few minutes ago, and it bounced off inside my head somewhere and bounced around a few times, and I almost grabbed it, but I'm going to grab it now. You said, this idea that, we really have to look at the pay of these people, and we have to look at whether they're winning or not. And part of winning is, am I making enough money to make it make sense for me to come to work?
Right.
and like, if I'm getting 82 cents on the dollar, or I'm getting paid less than my male counterparts, my childcare is not discounted because I'm female. I still have to pay, for nanny help or,
daycare,
for daycare or for some sort of after school programs or whatever it is. Like, I don't understand the idea that we wouldn't be keeping track of this sort of pay equity and really paying attention. Where are the women in our firm compared to the men? And are they really 18% less impactful? And maybe you don't have this equity problem, and I know I'm standing on a soapbox here because this is something that bugs the heck out of me. It really does. It really bothers me that anybody would sit in a compensation discussion and allow a person of color or a woman to be paid less than an equal performer at the same level of responsibility. That feels unconscionable to me.
So I have a crazy place to look. And I don't know what you said that made me think of it, but we do. So I love all that stats, and my gosh, we should probably be doing more recommendation of that, Jen, with the clients that we're working with. Yes. But we also do strange things that give a blunt but sideways message to women. Like, you're not really one of the boys or guys. And I know you can go, Jen, that really doesn't still exist here. However, I have been to a retreat in the last few years where after the retreat, we go to the managing partner's house and smoke cigars in the backyard. And I know some women do that, but not very many. Or, we had somebody share at a state society event that, they go skeet shooting with their clients. Like that's what they do and like, do I need to shoot? Now my middle daughter would be all over that. She was on the snap sheet. Most girls are not. And I know that's like, come along or come learn about it. There's strategies, but there's things that we do and say that are still having it be a man's world instead of a women's world. And I know
or unisex.
Or unisex.
Yes. Gender
neutral. Yes. Yes. Even better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So that's another place to look. And really, those can be awkward conversations, and they could be things that we've done for years that we just, love. And we might need to kind of look at those and say, what could we do different? Should we change it? How is this being received? And if you are hearing it, if people are saying it, are we bringing it to the leadership group and talking to the leadership group about it? Or as HR leaders, if you're hearing it, or, if there's a leader, that's listening to this, are you raising it, or are we afraid to because it's sacred in the firm and, not allowed? But anyway, there's things that we're doing like that perpetuate this feeling of, I cannot be a leader here. And so there's probably other things that we're doing also that will perpetuate that feeling that I can't be a leader here. We talked about pay and childcare and winning at home, but also just some of the, like I said, sacred things that we have in place. Sorry. I told you it was a crazy thought.
It's not crazy. It's called inclusivity, and I don't feel included. And it's not even that I might not think I could be a leader here. I might think I don't fit in here.
Right.
So I can be a leader here. My skills are good enough to lead here. I'm able to serve the clients that we serve here. I'm doing a good job selling here. People like to work for me here. I have good ideas here. So I could be a leader here, but I don't feel like I fit in with these people because they are predominantly male and predominantly, guy-like in their norms and behaviors and habits and traditions. And that's, I feel just as sad for that woman who doesn't feel like she fits in as I do for the men who have to change, because they do have to change.
Right.
And it is sad.
It is
I
sad.
know that it's sad when you have to say, wow, these things we always did, they weren't very inclusive. So we have to stop them. And I understand the loss of those traditions, and that can feel, you could have resentment or sadness or all kinds of junk about it. But we have a shrinking workforce age 25 to 64 years old in this country. We do not have a big population under 25 to save us coming. We have to do less or more with less, more with fewer people. And we are going to have fewer people to choose from for our labor force. And I promise you, it is going to be important that we find a way to include and celebrate and elevate and change our norms and behaviors and the ways that we think and the ways we behave to embrace women and embrace people of color and embrace gender neutral folks. Mm-hmm. And people with differences from our traditions. Right. If we don't figure that out and we don't broaden our minds and broaden our ways of being and really look at being more transparent and more fair and more open-minded, we are going to find ourselves in just the tightest possible labor squeeze.
Yep.
And I don't know if you can sustain a firm without making those changes in this day and age.
Well, and part of that elevation too, I think is this idea of mentorship and advocacy, and this idea of belonging is seeing someone like me. And we talk about that in DE&I all the time. And for women, sometimes it's, I want to see a woman partner that has raised kids in the profession. And often when we look at women leaders, women partners, they don't have kids, or they're done raising kids, did not raise them in the profession. Different scenarios than like me. And so how do we facilitate that? And so that they have somebody that they can mirror. And I've coached a couple people in the last couple of years, and they are doing it right now. They're Gen Xers raising their families, promoted to partner. And I'm like, you've got to like figure out how you can mentor that next group of women so they can see someone like you that can do that. And combination of women, because it's not just that one. I'm not trying to make it be just that one. And then the other piece of the whole mentoring and advocacy is, again, we make the mistake of, I'm going to bring people like me. And so if I have a bunch of male partners, they're going to bring guys along, to happy hour with a client or to play golf or whatever. And that's like an unconscious, bias that we have, not necessarily intentional, although sometimes it is, depending on where we are in the region of our country. They don't want to, go and take a woman out on a networking event or whatever, because of how it could be perceived. So we still have some of that exists, but more often I just naturally gravitate to people that are like me. And then women are not invited to those client meetings. Women are not invited to those business development events or whatever, even social activities. And so we have to be, again, super intentional, maybe track it and say, what are we doing to make sure that we are bringing women along and being intentional about it?
Yeah, man, there's a lot more we could do. There are so many wonderful, bright, innovative, people-centered, relational, fantastic women leaders out there. And we have to find a way to keep as many of them in our firms and in our profession as we possibly can. We just have to look at these things. And, we are celebrating International Women's Day for sure. And we are so happy that we have as many great women in the workplace as we do. But boy, do we still need to continue to work toward, broadening our gender horizons and making our firms more inclusive and more, bringing real true equity into pay and promotion and really just behavioral norms,
Right.
cultural traditions, and all those things. We're going to have to bring more equity to everything. And one place to start, if you're a firm leader and you're looking around and you're thinking, boy, we really don't have a lot of strong women leaders at the director and up level or whatever, for this one person gets promoted and two women quit. If you're thinking that, ask the women, go out and ask your women and say, take the gloves off. Tell us, what do we need to do to make this a more equitable place for women, and see
Equitable and belonging. So you feel like you belong here. Yeah. Yeah. And this week, celebrate your women, in the spirit of International Women's Day, celebrate your women, highlight the women leaders you have, show gratitude, maybe show some differences. I don't know, but there's like all that we need to handle. Yes, that we talked about. But this week, you could take the step of, let's celebrate the women in your firm and acknowledge them and, find ways to celebrate them and their uniqueness and their contribution. So we would love to dialogue with you more on this topic. We're a little passionate about it. And so let us know if you have additional thoughts or things that you're doing or questions. You can reach out to us at any time. So we appreciated sharing this with you. Happy International Women's Day. And we hope you have a great week. Thanks for being with us.